Well, I'm Kieran Lee. I'm a principal at DesignInc Architects, and I worked on this building right from before we actually had the project through its completion, and it's one that I feel really privileged to be a part of. I'll hopefully be able to share with you some of those reasons why I feel really privileged about it, but I think that from a sustainability perspective, locally, nationally, internationally, I think it sets some real great benchmarks and aspirations that hopefully lead the way for others to follow, and we're really keen to bring people along in the journey, as well as, most importantly, providing a great building for the community. So, Living Futures Institute asks, what does good like? What does good like? What does good look like, rather? And I think that this building shows one of those ways of what good could look like. So, credentials, we're the first public community building to get Passive House certification, which was challenging. It was a huge achievement, which we're really proud of. We're the only building of its type seeking Living Building Challenge HIL certification, a great sort of holistic sustainability certification. We're still tracking towards that because it requires actual performance. The building's just been open for a year so far. But the PILs which we've adopted for that are beauty, energy and equity. And as part of the energy PIL, we've got a building which is designed to be not only zero energy, but actually energy positive. And these are all really great, and what this performance has actually allowed us to do was then focus on the health and wellbeing outcomes that this project could provide. So building performance is great, but actual people's experience and their wellbeing and how you can support that within a building, especially for a community building like this, is great that we've got to kind of take for granted a lot of the performative aspects of a building. So this is a sign which we've got up. This was part of the Living Building Challenge requirements. So we've got this sign in one of the entries. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but you can see that there's a lot of stuff happening. These are about initiatives. Some of the things you can see, some of the things you can't, but there's things like, from a water perspective, there's no potable water which is used for irrigation or toilet flushing, through to additional sorts of layers about public art, sort of things like, providing community gardens, and then, how we've adopted and reused the heritage buildings which were on site as well. And the great thing about putting these signs, and these are some of the other ones that you'll have if you visit the library, is that the Community Hub, is that it's really about sharing and the generosity of this building. So we have all of this performance, but we want to make sure that we can share it as much as possible with others, whether they be people in the industry or just public coming through. So I'll talk about some of these things, obviously not all of them, but from a place perspective, I think that we should all aspire to regenerative projects. This building was a disused old primary school site when we got there, so we've maintained some of the buildings. We saved as many trees as we could along the way, and there has been a real regeneration from activity on the site. There's been a net increase in the planting and vegetation, so I think that in a lot of aspects this is a regenerative project. Opportunities externally as well about landscape. So there's more than 100 children at this centre, sort of 5 days a week, and how they can learn from nature and interact with a carefully selected palette of planting, as well as plant some of the tree stumps from the trees which we couldn't retain on site as well. Now, I have spoken for hours about Passive House, and I'm not going to talk about this, but here's some other slides that we've spoken about. It's in essence, it's a fundamentally different way to build to what is standard in Australia. And there was a lot of work for how we could interact with heritage buildings, how we would create a really robust thermal envelope. A lot of the things behind the scenes you don't see, but some of the stuff we also sought to integrate within the building. So the glue-lamp structure throughout the building is highly visible. We think it's great from a biophilic design outcome, and it's evocative of a tree canopy. Obviously it's holding up the building, but the diagonal nature of it also means that we get to remove any need for bracing, which makes things really easy for air tightness membranes and things. So it's about these holistic solutions which we can achieve through the project. I mentioned energy before, so Passive House gives us a really low energy building, which then allowed us a natural stepping stone to actually create an energy positive building. So we've got a building which is designed to provide at its opening 125% annually of the energy which you consume. 125 because it's modeled sort of long term, so allowing for degradation, we can still have a zero energy building 10, 20 years into the future. And there's also batteries which are provided for this building. So If we get no power and no solar coming in, we can still operate for up to 7 days, and that provides a real opportunity with its certain performance to be a place of refuge for the community in natural disasters, or maybe things that don't quite make a disaster status, but just a really hot or really cold week. Having beauty as a pedal and a mandate for the project was great. Before even this beauty pedal was adopted, we were approaching things from about providing connection with nature and natural experiences, and looking at things through a range of biophilic design and all of the great health and well-being outcomes that that can achieve. And there is a real generosity of the space and the material palettes that we choose. So whether that's actual seeing plants within the library, the quality of daylight that we get through the materials, their tactility, their familiarity, and the scale of spaces as well. Reuse the heritage building in there, so that was great to be able to adopt that, but also have it. We had some external requirements and need to have, but we also wanted to retain as much of an identity internal to the building. Post-occupancy evaluation, great, we're doing well for time. So we're having to track quantitative aspects, and we're getting more information. We're only starting to get good quality of information, but as recently, I think in the last few months, when we had some really hot days, we managed to get some data, and the building was producing 150% of the power which it was consuming on one of the hottest days that we had recently. And then one of the other focuses that we've had for post-occupancy evaluation is the actual experience of people. So talking to them and getting feedback on how they're finding the building based on what we envisaged for them, and this is about people's well-being and experiences. And there's a resounding common response about the calming influence that this building has. It's a calm, it's a restorative environment. The customer service is saying that people, they find actually get de-escalated and they want to come in and have an argument about a parking ticket or something like that. And we know that staff are coming in, they're choosing to work in this building rather than at home or other facilities they have. And I'll finish with this quote which I really love, which is, "My heart is open. I've lived here for 50 years and this building is like a ray of sunshine. I feel like I was born here." And that's some feedback which we get from one of the Glenroy citizens, and it's a community that feels very privileged and respected to actually have a building like this.